Okay, welcome back over here. We have a special privilege to be with Mark Halpern, and we're going to be discussing once again Tzedakah, charity, new philanthropy, innovations in giving. So here we are. Mark, we want to talk about a very interesting topic called the accidental philanthropist. Double click on that. What does that mean?
Yeah, I guess you could interpret it many, many different ways, but from my 35 years of professional experience and just also my experience in the community, there are two types of people. There are those people who give, tzedakah. It's part of their DNA, came from the Bubbies and the Zaydis, and it's a mitzvah, daraisa, right? And then there are those people who don't give. Perhaps they didn't get the chinuch, they didn't get the education. It wasn't part of their DNA. When those people who don't give realize that they can actually convert their taxes into charitable legacies and take house money, the government tax money, and give it to charity, suddenly they become accidental philanthropists and give accidental philanthropy. Whereas the people now who are already giving, once they understand what can be done around proper planning, they can give more for the same amount they were planning on giving, or give the same amount for less cost. So it's all around being cost efficient and tax efficient.
So it's about being smart, basically. It sounds like when people, there's a few things. It sounds like there's the person who wasn't trained in it. But if you have an inclination, it doesn't mean you're thinking about it from a sense of like, how is this strategically going to benefit my portfolio or my tax implications? You're thinking like, I'm giving to this charitable organization because I love them. I love what they do. I love the impact that they're making. I love how they make other people feel. They make me feel when I make other people feel that way. But now we're saying, wait a second, there's also the other side of it, which is like, and it might feel like a little bit of like, not selfish, but self-serving, which is when you think of donations, you're not thinking about how does the tax strategically benefit me? But we're saying, why not?
Right. Well, they say that 2/3 of decisions to give money are predicated by people's passions. What organization do they care about? Poverty, families, education, whatever the case might be. Only 13% are based on tax.
Yes.
So it's not the tax tail that's wagging the dog. But if you can now take those people who are passionate and teach them about the tax part, suddenly you can make tremendous impact. And the challenge today, Josh, is that the professional advisors don't know all of this, right? They're busy being professional advisors.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're very reactive as opposed to proactive. So they're not really leaning into this. And the charities, unfortunately, are still focusing on keeping the lights on. It's like they're dealing with fires. So let's bring in cash, checks, and credit cards, and maybe some appreciated securities, which I was just dealing with a charity last week that raises $3 million a year, and they've never talked to donors about appreciated securities. So, there are so many different ways. It's not a lot of heavy lifting. Just understand that this is about creating more money today and helping your donors. And don't you think they would appreciate learning this? And if they're not going to hear it from you, they're just not going to hear it. And that's part of the reason that we're doing this wonderful podcast together.
Yeah, so it's about education, right? Because I feel like, we don't go to school to learn good behavior. And like, where do we go to school to really learn about tax, strategic, and impactful giving, right? It's because it's really a very niche thinking process, because it's really the blend between accounting, tax, legacy, and philanthropy. And like, that's really sometimes 3 different professional people coming together, right? So where do you think we can start making some changes on that reality, other than what we're doing right now, which is talking about it?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're all a good point. And I think that intersection is really important, because you create what I call in some business worlds, it's called arbitrage, right? Arbitrage is a cool word. I don't know what it really means, but it just means people turn something that's stinky into something that's valuable by sort of moving the shells around. I'd say that really as a charitable fundraiser or as a foundation or whatever, I think the greatest accidental philanthropists can just be found in your CRM, in your client relationship management system, hopefully if you have one, and sort of saying, who are my major donors? Who are my mid-level donors? Who are my monthly donors? And creating a strategy for each of those. But at the very highest level of opportunity, it's crazy, is people who are single, widowed, or divorced. Mm-hmm. And you would think, what? Let's just go for the gazillionaires. But you don't have to be Warren Buffett or Bill Gates to be a philanthropist. You just have to know that there's a tax bill that most people are not aware of, and that you can actually instead donate that house money or that tax to charity as opposed to giving it to the CRA. Why widows, singles, and divorcees? It's in Canada, they're biased against. See, when you die, and if you're married, all of your money, your assets roll over tax-free to your spouse. It's called a tax-free spousal rollover.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tax on the first to die. The tax owes on the second to die. When the government considers it as if you sold everything that you have at market value, and they want a percentage of all your success that you've had along the way, such as your RSPs will be taxed at 53.53%. Yeah, so how many people who are listening today that have donors that are sitting there, let's say they're single because they're one incident away from a huge tax disposition, you've got to have a donor that's got $1 million of RSPs. That's small money. First of all, that donor has to know that it's only worth $420,000. It's not worth $1 million because the government's taking over half of it. So if those donors knew that they could actually donate that RSP to charity when they die, as an example, then there's no tax. Charity gets all the money. Ottawa gets none. And Ottawa blesses this. But if the person's alive and let's say they don't need that money for their lifestyle expense, it's not being used to, keep the lights on, they could actually donate it today or donate part of it today to charity. And instead of having a 53.5% haircut on tax, they could donate it at a discount of about 3.5%. So that person that's sitting there with $1 million could actually donate that amount of money to charity or charities or to a donor advised fund at a cost of 3.5% versus giving away over 50% to the government. And now you have all that money to give to causes that you care about. So I had one charity in Toronto where they had a woman in her 70s who had a $600,000 RIF. She was not married, no kids, no real relatives to give to. Okay. And they introduced me to her. And in the end, what did she do? She donated the $600,000 today to those charities. It's not easy. And she donated to 3 charities. That's $200,000 to each charity. That's a lot of dialing and smiling to try to get $200,000.
Sure.
And she did that all in a very tax and cost efficient way. And what happened is it also allowed us to discover she had a whole bunch of other money. There was another $5 million and things that had not been planned. And she then went ahead and with some planning and her professionals made more donations that are going to go to the charities of her choice down the road. How did that happen? By helping her identify that she was an accidental philanthropist just on one little tiny thing. So that would be one idea, Josh, of accidental philanthropy in action.
Now, when we talk about moving to this next stage, because we say to ourselves, okay, there's opportunity for me. I know there's something coming down the pipeline in terms of I can think about my life insurance being strategically used. Who's the next person I call? Is it my accountant? Is it my lawyer? Is it my rabbi? Is it my health insurance, life insurance specialist? I think that's the question a lot of people have is it sounds great, but who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters. No, okay. I had to say that.
I know.
80s.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Aging ourselves. So you're saying somebody identifies, I want to do something. Who should I contact to understand what's the best approach here?
Yeah.
So I wish I could say, people have a very good relationship with their accountant, right? Their accountant seems to know their situation, but unfortunately, the accountant doesn't know this information. It's a challenge, right? So it's such a great question because I'm like, where do you go? I mean, obviously, people can contact us, right?
This wasn't a gratuitous plug.
This was not a plug. I'm not paying for this public service announcement, but for us in my world, it's all about tzedakah. It's about, tzedakah is often mistranslated as charity. It really means righteousness or justice. We have an obligation to give. And there's 2 ways for me, Mark Halpern, to give charity. One is I can write a check or I can teach other people how to write checks. Yeah. And I can create much more that way. And I can also get a lot more merit for it as well. So we always say, contact us. Let us help you figure out what you can do. Here's your situation. Let's build on some strategies. And then please invite your professional advisor, your insurance advisor, your investment advisor, your accountant. You need a team, and let them understand it. We're not territorial. We're collaborative. So if at the end of the day, you just take these ideas and do something with it that's going to better the world, the Jewish world, then I'm happy as can be. Like that's sort of the Matthias for being here.
Do you feel like maybe there's an opportunity for us to be able to really educate the lawyers, the tax planners, the accountants, even also the executive directors and the CEOs of the philanthropic world? Like really, it's got to be, and the donors. And really, it's like kind of like an all hands on deck educational experience, because really it seems to me what you're saying is that like millions, if not multiple millions, are going
hundreds
to hundreds
of millions,
hundreds
of millions of dollars. Yeah. So where does it start? Look at, what really needs, like, it would be great to have a Rav in the community. So this must be done. Okay. But we know what happened on Hard Sinai. Not everybody listened to that also. I mean, unfortunately, that's why H. Torah and Olami is trying to get them to.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. But the truth is that if we were to have some Gevirim, some people in the community who understood not only this opportunity, but this responsibility, and they came together to say, no, we need to do this. And we create, let's say, an ASIFA. And this could be anywhere in North America. I'm not talking about just here in Toronto. In every city, you have an ASIFA where it's a day on fundraising, but not just the old fundraising, the new philanthropy, understanding how all of these things fit. So at least you get the language, you understand what you can maybe calendarize and put forward and sort of strategize, and then perhaps have a master class, more education, because I think you're spot on. This is about learning. This is about wisdom and knowledge, which we're famous for, right? They've accused us of everything and called us everything, but one thing they've never called us is stupid, right?
We got a lot of good intellectual property.
We do.
We invented the IP.
we did, but unfortunately, this is an area it's very frustrating for me because there is wisdom and knowledge here that people need to know of. So we could create, let's say, a further series, and then perhaps each charity has their own professional groups. You have donors who are accountants, lawyers, investment insurance people. Create a professional advisory board. Let's educate them because they're gatekeepers potentially to donors for your organization. It's going to be a process, Josh. This is not instant coffee. This is about, it's about changing the paradigm. It's about people waking up and saying, we must do this. Like if we don't, then bad on us because, this is an obligation and it's also a big responsibility. And if it doesn't mean you're going to bring somebody into your organization to do this, which could be fantastic. A donor donates money. So you have a salaried person who's just doing this. And let's just say they're making $100,000 a year, but they're creating $5 million of gifts out of that. You would do that 10 times a day.
For sure.
But it's going to take somebody to say this must get done and it has to be, it's important. So our job is to really raise the bar. They say as the tides rise, so do all the boats. So this is about helping the entire, Jewish world.
Because it sounds like what we're talking about is like also the potential of even an endowment. Meaning like, because on the one hand, you could say every Mostos or every foundation themselves can unilaterally try to get money in their coffer. But we can also even be big picture thinkers for a second and say like, a national Jewish endowment, right? Where like we're saying like and even that can be, we always had to have another endowment with another endowment because, there's always going to be turf wars. But, everyone has like their flavors, Pepsi and Coke. But when it comes to like even movements together, you can have groups of people saying like, we can do this together, right? We can rally our resources and educate our donors together. And there could be a group effort of saying like, hundreds of families saying we're putting policies in, this money can be creating $100 million. If you have 100 families, let's just play the numbers out. If I'm right, you have one family. Most families today, I can imagine, have at least $1 million policy. Most likely.
You mean just for their family?
Just for their family.
In case of God forbid.
In case of the God forbid stuff, right? So, and I can imagine once people turn 70, most of the people are like, oh, we made it past the God forbid stuff, Baruch Hashem. And now either the policy lapses and they're like, okay, we're done. We're going to save our money because now it's going to go to whole term. Or they can say like, we can convert that thing, right? Make it have street value in the marketplace and then donate that, right? All of a sudden they were going to give it up anyway. And now all of a sudden they're leaving the money on the table. But if they just were like called the timeout and they're like, oh, it's lapsing in a year from now. And you had 100 families deciding when they're getting to that juncture, we're throwing it into the hat, right? And all of a sudden, it's $100 million of potential worth that, God willing, will accrue in 50 years. I may have an SRIM for them. But whatever it is, you've now created a forest of opportunity, an entire orchard waiting to be plucked of $100 million. Like, and it's salivating in some sense, because you look at Harvard, you look at these massive Ivy League institutions with, I don't even know if it's in the billions.
Billions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for keeping me in reality.
Yep.
Billions of dollars of endowment.
Yep.
And we're saying like, and that's just 100 families throwing their hat into a ringer and just literally taking something that literally will be garbage next year.
Right.
And being a little smart about it, throwing it in, all of a sudden, you're now part of an ecosystem.
Yeah, listen, again, that comes down, you've just described 10 different strategies that we could go through, but there's no question. The challenge with a lot of Jewish people, for instance, like I'm just saying, we give, right? We give. At the same time, we have a very expensive lifestyle, right? It's a very expensive lifestyle. And we also have big families who we have to take care of, right? It's not just, they've heard of Freedom 55. They say it used to be that when you turn 55, you're free. But today, Freedom 55 is when your youngest child is 55. That's Freedom 55, right? So I'm just saying that. So we also have kids and families that we're supporting. It makes it that much more difficult for us to talk about the charities as part of the strategic philanthropy or the estate planning that we're doing. But what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about taking table stakes, house money, the stuff that you're not going to take, you're not going to spend. You're just giving to Ottawa or to the IRS and using that money to be able to give. Now it's a totally different look. But I like your idea of the endowment. We have in mind to create a $500 million endowment here in Toronto. And it's, it's not pie in the sky. It's something that we've talked about and we monitored and were able to measure on, yes, every family could get involved, but even some of the bigger Gevirim, right? Like the bigger people where, they might want to lend their life, their insurability. Let's say they're 65 years of age plus. Yes, they could do something on their own, for the community. Or what we could do is we can take some of the younger Gevirim, like the up and comers. They could be actually funding these policies as an example, which could be owned by a tzedakah, in which case the donations are tax receivable, and then that money could be used to create, down the road, let's just say in the next 20, 30 years, $500 million of. Now imagine if you create $500 million and in like another 20, 30 years from now, that starts to produce, but at $500 million, just invested at, 10% a year, of whatever that would look like, that's $50 million a year without having to call donors and to put out fires. There's $50 million already on the table to help all of these different mices. That's a game changer. Massive. That keeps, in Seattle, which is remarkable. In Seattle, many years ago, there was a Jewish man who put a $50 million insurance policy on himself. Wow. And when he died, it was donated for Jewish education in Seattle. As a result, the tuitions in Seattle are only about $6,000 a year across the board, because of this endowment that's there, perpetually paying money to help people. So we have to start, I think when it comes down, we have to start be thinking smarter, right? Can't be the old philanthropy. It's got to be the new philanthropy. And it's going to take a team. It's going to take people coming together to say, this is important. Let's put our minds together. We're smart people, but it can be done, but it definitely needs attention.
I feel like the challenge is like everyone's in their Dalit Amos, everyone's in their box of their world. And this is big picture thinking. And it requires someone who's not necessarily, who's willing to switch their kippah, right? And put on the big picture kippah, which is like, I'm not only a executive director of this Mossad, or I'm only, leading or board director of this organization, but like I'm seeing the big picture. And we're going to pool our efforts and energies together to learn and make a move on this. I feel like, because at the end of the day, like you're saying, it's a resource issue, but the biggest resource challenge is our time and energy. Like, it feels like what we're doing, this paradigm shift we're really asking people to do, is requiring them to think differently, act differently, connect and socialize differently in this context and sphere, to think about how do we engender the biggest rising of the tide possible together. Right? It's a different. I just don't know why there's a feeling in the feeling inside me. It feels different.
Yeah.
Feels like we're no longer playing in the
Yeah.
NFL. You have your league, I have my league, and you have your team and my team. It feels like there has to be a little bit of who's thinking about the entire structure.
Right. And it's also about being a little bit more creative with our messaging as well. Like nobody, if you say, "Oh, this is a great idea, Halpern, we're going to put it on our website," nobody's going to your website, right? If you put a link on your signature, leave a legacy, they're going to go to the website. It's like there's nothing there. If you say, I'm going to get into legacy, let's send a 3 or 4 paragraph email to somebody, or voicemail. Nobody is. We're all ADD. It's terrible. So again, the new philanthropy has to be a very different way of doing it. It's got to be able to take the complex and make it very simple. And we're living in a TikTok generation, so it's got to be done in 60 seconds or less. That all you want to do for all your donors, and we have a whole slew of videos on this, is to get people to watch something like that single person who has $1 million RSP and no children, and for them to get what I call an aha YOLO gold moment, right? Or a wow, I did not know that. And now you get permission to be able to move the conversation forward. But you got to get that permission to move it. They have to be macabre. It has to be there because they want it, because they see it and nobody's told me, tell me more, as opposed to sell me something that can't be done.
It's interesting. In my coaching world, there's 2 things I like to proceed with any coaching conversation: Ratzon and Rishus. You got to have the Ratzon of wanting to make a change, right? And you also have to give yourself Rishus, permission, and the coach permission to make the change, right? Because without that, as you're describing, like if there's no desire and there's no willingness on other parts to trust and be trusting, right? Then it's not going to work. And I feel like this is where, you need to have trusted advisors, because this is so intimate. Because really, at the end of the day, getting in behind people's books, getting into their legacies, it's like you're opening up the door of like, well, what are your ambitions? What did you live for? What are you living for? And I feel like there is a lot of those emotional challenges, because you're just kind of like opening up your closet. And I was just having a conversation with someone. They're like, I got to go through my closet, but like, it's so hard. And I'm like, okay, why? He's like, because there's like this garment, the suit I used to wear that I can't wear anymore. Right? It's just like holds me back. I just can't let go of it. But you don't fit into it. I know. My wife
always reminds me of that. That's why I'm losing weight, on purpose. She won't say that anymore, right?
But I think when similarly the philanthropic, like I guess the back discussion of what it deals with, it really is a psychological discussion of like, what am I living for? I'm dealing with mortality. I'm thinking about my legacy. And like, you have to be a type of person who like, the Chovos HaLevavos in Shara Cheshbon HaNefesh and the chapter of self-accounting, there's one of them that says you have to contemplate the day of death. Number 17, I believe. You have to contemplate your day of death. And someone could be like, time out. That's so morbid, Rabbi. Like, why are you talking about that? And you see like, no, it's not morbid. If you look at the Orchot Tzadikim, he says you have to think about that thought twice a day, because it creates and engenders a mindset of what are you living for.
Right. We're not living like Noach or whatever. We're not living hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
We have a very short period of time. I heard a great mashal, and that is, when we're kids, we're told that if there's a fire, you run away from it. You run away from the fire. But if there's a fire and you're working in a submarine, you run towards it. Why? You got to know you can't run away from it. You got to run towards it. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So this whole topic, it requires leaning in for people that maybe they're not as comfortable. But I want everybody, all the listeners, to know that your donors, the people who care about your organization, really want this conversation. They're waiting to have it from you. It can't be, we need more money. We got to pay all this off. It's really, you've been a partner with us, and we so appreciate that. But we're also very sensitive to our organization's legacy and your legacy. And we'd like you to consider creating a legacy gift or a planned gift or a blended gift, where we're going to take a certain amount of your annual gift and we're going to use it towards a legacy gift for the next 1 year or 10 years. And let's measure what that looks like. What we're finding, Josh, is that 9 times out of 10, the donor will say, That's a great idea. And instead of dialing down their current gift, they say, yes, let's do this and let's do this. And then when they do say, let's do this, what happens is statistics say that they actually increase their annual giving by around 41% or more because they've got skin in the game.
Yeah.
This is my commit. This is my baby. This is my organization. I'm invested. So it's not about dialing down your current gifts. It's actually a way to create more gifts today. So where fundraisers might say it's biting off your nose in spite of your face, no, you are helping the organization for the future so that the future executive director, you've planted those carob trees.
Oh yeah.
They're feeding from them in the future. They're thanking you. You're getting all the reward for that. But at the same time, you're also creating money for today that would not normally come to you because you've shown them creative ways to turn tax into charity.
It's basically you double down. Like, not like I play blackjack, but you can double down. When you get that right hand coming and you're like, I'm going to double down in that play. And you're saying that the donor basically can double down. When they get this out hand delivered to them, you're saying this is the hand that really can really make a maximum impact. You can double down right now and really multiply your effect. And really, it's really creating, like you're saying, that sense of investment, excitement, that like I'm doing something that this organization can catapult itself in the next years. And I might not be able to see it, but that's cool. Like I'm feeling like, they can feel so like it's like almost like watching their family grow, like seeing their children and grandchildren. They don't necessarily going to see their great-great-grandchildren, but when they see the fact that like there's continuity happening, right? There's a Masorah, it's being passed on. They don't need to see the end to end to end. They would like to, as long as they can. May God bless them to see many years of it. But it's knowing that like if the great-grandchildren are doing good and they're healthy and they're great, then you know what? Most likely it's going to keep on going too.
It's like when you marry off your kids, and think, please God, everybody should marry off their kids in a good time to good people. And you have this sense of this feeling of, like if something would happen, God forbid, I did my job. I did my job. Like we got to this place. I did my job, So as a fundraiser too, you've got to get to that place where, yes, you kept the lights on and you did your, expansion, but you got to feel that you really did your job. And this is, as I said, if you're not having these conversations, you're really a liability to that job. And that's why, again, if you can't do it yourself, you need to bring people in who can help you, at least to work with. And that's why we'd love to hear from some of the mices that we can help.
So building the arbitrage team, build in that team.
And what was that thing about blackjack? What's that exactly? Poker?
I think it's one thing, I don't know. I think it's like a pimple sometimes that gets on your face.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But we do want to say this has been a pleasure speaking with Mark over here. And, we were talking about the accidental philanthropist, navigating becoming the intentional philanthropist, even a sniper philanthropist, perhaps, or a pointed philanthropist.
Yeah.
And saying that it takes a village, it takes a team to really make this process happen, but not to so much to the point where it's a hurdle, but really it's everyone can really be a gatekeeper and a gate opener, door opener for you into this experience. Speak to your local accountant, speak to your local life insurance policy broker, speak to someone who knows about it, speak to Mark, right? And we can continue the conversations going forward. But Mark, it's a pleasure. I think we put out a lot of great ideas out there.
Yes.
Let's see how everyone thinks. It was a pleasure.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. Let's continue educating and raising the bar for everybody.
Sounds great. You like what you heard? Well, guess what? Click the link, subscribe, join us, connect with us so that we can continue to provide you fresh, awesome content. Thanks for joining.